This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Burkina Faso updates death toll from attack on an army unit to 24, up from 10 soldiers. Hong Kong says it is open to dialogue with the public. And more migrants jump off a rescue ship off the Italian island in a desperate bid to reach shore. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, Penina Karibe with the day's business headlines.
Thank you, Beatrice. And coming up on Africa Live Business, currency devaluations ate into South Africa's retail chains' profits, and tax officials in Nigeria on the spot over poor revenue collections. I'll have details of those stories and plenty more in just a bit. For now, it's back to you, Beatrice.
Penina, thank you. And let's begin the hour in Burkina Faso. Unidentified militants have attacked an army unit in the northern part of the country. According to the military, 24 soldiers were killed in the attack, updating its previous death toll of 10. The attack is reported to have occurred in the early hours of Monday morning in Kautogu in the South Province. 7 other soldiers have been wounded and 5 are still missing. The army says that it is continuing a land and air operation launched in response to the attack. Northern Burkina Faso has been overrun by Islamist violence this year, and the armed forces have been struggling to contain the violence. Across the Sahel, hundreds of civilians have died and more than 150,000 have fled as the influence of jihadist groups with links to Al-Qaeda and ISIL continues to grow. Well, let's get the latest now on the attack in Burkina Faso. I'm joined by CGTN's Phil Ihaza. He's in Abuja in Nigeria for us. Phil, this latest attack is being described as the worst in Burkina Faso since 2016. Can you give us an update on what really happened and those behind the attack?
Well, thank you, Beatrice. It's said that it's seen as the worst attack in Burkina Faso since 2016 because the last time such an attack, especially on its military, happened was 2016, December 2016, when 12 soldiers, at least 12 soldiers were killed in attacks that had several armed assailants on its military base, still in this same province known as Soum province, which is on the northern the northern part of the country, which borders Mali. Now, this attack is seen as the worst in recent times because it is now the death toll of its soldiers is now double the latest attack, which is 24. According to the president, Roch Kabore, he says that 24 have died, 7 others are injured, 7 other soldiers are injured, and 5 more are missing in this attack. No identity or much information have not been given about the identity of the assailants or the attackers, but it bears the hallmark, the semblance of 2 groups which have been responsible for, causing havoc, wreaking havoc on Burkina Faso, especially the capital, Ouagadougou. Several attacks have occurred, which has also led to about 500 deaths since 2015. Now, these 2 groups, one of them known as JNIM, pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, and the other group known as Ansarul Islamic Group is emerged, in 2016, from the northern, the Malian border with the country. So it's difficult right now to really say who's responsible for the attack, but of course these major groups will be pointed to.
So it is difficult to say exactly who's behind the attack, but the army says that it is currently continuing a land and air operation in the wake of those attacks. What do we know?
That's very correct. According to the army, there's been retaliatory attacks, there's been response and raids, air and ground operations against these attackers, but not much information also has been given about these attacks because the army will want to keep much of the information to itself until it has been able to gain some level of progress, on these assailants. Their target will be to discover their hideouts, to disarm many of them, because most of them usually come in their numbers with motorcycles and several rifles and all of that, judging from what we've seen in the past. But also you will recall that in December, there was a state of emergency declared in several northern provinces, including this same Sum province, because of deteriorating security attacks in that region. So we'll just keep monitoring the air and ground operations that the army says it's carrying out as a response to the attack.
Well, Phil, in early May, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Burkina Faso, highlighting the growing security problem. And since that visit, though, has there been any progress in securing not just Burkina Faso, but the greater Sahel region?
Well, it's a bit sketchy or difficult to really say there's been progress since the last visit of Angela Merkel, German Chancellor, which actually occurred on May 2nd. If you look at 8 days after French troops released 4 foreign hostages that were kidnapped in that region, and then 10 days after, which was May 12th, there was a serious attack on a church in the same Ouagadougou, where a priest and 5 members were killed, and after that there's been pockets of attacks here and there, but security analysts have said, especially from looking at the kind of attacks that have spread across the Sahel region, they've said that military attack, military response is not the only solution. There has to be some form of capacity building. There has to be intelligence gathering, cooperation, inter-border cooperation as well with the Sahel countries. And that may be the reason why Angela Merkel's visit saw her pledging about $22 million to Burkina Faso and $39 million to Niger, as well as to other countries. The hope now is that the funds, the support, the cooperation with these countries begin to yield results quicker than we're seeing in terms of police training and development of projects and state facilities that would help in warding off these attacks.
Philly House joining us there from Abuja. Thank you. Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam says the executive is open to dialogue with the public. She says authorities will talk to peaceful protesters and tackle complaints against the police. Lam also expressed hope that the peaceful protest at Victoria Park over the weekend was the start of an effort to restore order.
We'll immediately set up a dialogue mechanism. When we say dialogue mechanism, we mean we would like to treat each other with respect and fairness to find a way for Hong Kong today. We hope this communication channel can be open and direct so that we can communicate with people of different backgrounds. Other secretaries and I would like to go to the communities and have face-to-face communication with the people. In order to set up this kind of dialogue platform, we'll get in touch with some residents and hear their feedback.
On the economic situation in Hong Kong, Lam said to cope with downside risks, the SAR government has pledged to make necessary preparations and propose effective measures. Lam also echoed the central government's new policy on neighboring Shenzhen. She says the city's development into a key pilot zone would benefit the cooperation and synergy with Hong Kong. Well, people in Hong Kong believe the new pilot reforms in Shenzhen will promote the construction of the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area.
The new pilot reforms in Shenzhen can better connect Hong Kong to the mainland. It will help Hong Kong residents go to mainland more easily, whether it is for business or employment.
I think it will provide good opportunities for experts in the Great Bay Area. It will promote innovation and encourage entrepreneurship. As a researcher, I think it's a very rare opportunity for the young people.
For a Hong Kong resident like me, such opportunities and platform encourage me to seek professional development here.
Sudan's main opposition alliance has nominated Abdallah Hamdok, an economist who has served in various international institutions, as prime minister in the country's transitional government. The nomination is the first step towards the creation of a transitional government, which will prepare for free elections after the overthrow of former President Omar al-Bashir in April, following months of unrest. So who exactly is Abdallah Hamdok? CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
Up until Abdallah Hamdok was proposed for position of Prime Minister, little was known about him.
Your Excellency,
Hamdok has over 3 decades of experience in the public and private sectors in administration and policy. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Khartoum and a PhD degree from the School of Economic Studies, University of Manchester. Between 1981 and 1987, he worked as a senior official at the Finance Ministry in Sudan. From 1993 to 1995, he was the head of public sector group at Deloitte & Touche Management Consultants in Zimbabwe. From 1995 to 1997, he was the chief technical officer at the International Labour Organization. In 1997, he joined the African Development Bank as a principal policy economist, a post he held until 2001. He then worked briefly for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in 2001 and in 2002 as Director of Regional Integration and Trade. Between 2011 to October 2018, he was the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNECA.
I thank you for it.
Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
To Italy now, where migrants stranded on board a charity rescue ship have resulted to swimming to the shore of the port of Lampedusa amid a standoff with the Italian government that has barred the vessel from docking. More than 10 people were rescued after jumping overboard. Authorities from the ship are terming the situation as unsustainable despite declining an offer from Spain to go to its port city of Algeciras.
This is what the desperate migrants have resorted to.
Okay.
Attempting to reach the other side at all costs. Over 100 migrants have been stuck on board a Spanish charity rescue ship for 19 days now. On Tuesday, 10 of them attempted to jump to the other side, but were later rescued by Italian Coast Guard members who brought them to the mainland.
This highlights once again why pre-established, clear and predictable approach to how and where to disembark rescued passengers is very much needed.
2 men who were rescued were taken to the hospital after they jumped off the charity rescue ship. Dozens of unaccompanied minors were allowed to leave the ship, including a few sick people. The charity Open Arms describes the situation as dire. However, Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has suggested that the charity is exaggerating the state of the migrants.
6 EU states have come forward and are willing to receive the rescued passengers after disembarkation. This should now be a simple matter of getting them safely to dry land.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Refugee Agency has denounced the issue as tensions continue to rise over the situation.
Rescued people should not be used as hostages for the purpose of political point scoring. The situation right now is regrettable and should have never come to this.
Italy has taken a tough line on migrant entry, saying it has borne too much responsibility for handling African migration to Europe. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Tunisian women demand more inclusivity in the electoral process. And aid organizations look to tackle security concerns in Nigeria as the world marks Humanitarian Day.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
For look at economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Health officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo have confirmed another case of Ebola in the militia-controlled territory of Walikale. The new case, however, presents a higher risk with accessibility and potential violence, the major concern. Leon Sinyange tells us more.
Pinga, the village where the case was reported, lies about 90 miles northwest of Goma, one of the major towns affected by the Ebola epidemic. The new case has, however, got health officials more concerned. Walikale is under militia groups, which could raise the risk of uncontrolled spread of the disease. The area is also surrounded by dense forests and a very poor road network. Health officials have also confirmed the death of a second person in South Kivu. The 7-month-old child was being treated. The mother died last Thursday. They were the first confirmed cases in South Kivu. Now, according to the World Health Organization, there have been over 2,800 cases since the outbreak, the second largest ever, broke out more than a year ago. More than 1,900 people have succumbed to the disease. And with the latest cases, plans to vaccinate people crossing at the Uganda and Rwanda border posts have been intensified. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Women's rights organizations in Tunisia want women issues included in electoral programs in the country. Currently, the rates of women participation in elections is very low. Adnan Chauchi reports.
The League of Tunisian Women Voters has condemned the underrepresentation of women in the upcoming presidential and legislative elections. Only 2 women out of 26 candidates run for president, and only 4 women top legislative lists.
This is due to the lack of political will and non-implementation of the law by political parties, independent lists and coalition lists, which did not respect the principle of equality contained in the Article 46 of the Constitution.
Article 46 of the Constitution stipulates that the state commits to protect women's accrued rights and work to strengthen and develop those rights.
In principle, the state guarantees the equality of opportunities between men and women to have access to all levels of responsibility in all domains. The state works to attain parity between women and men in elected assemblies.
Women's rights activists emphasize the importance of enacting laws to promote horizontal parity in candidate lists to ensure fair representation of men and women.
The principle of parity is, first and foremost, a mentality and a culture that should be established in our society. Tunisia has made a giant leap in women's rights domain, but it's not enough. Either we advance and reach total equality, or go back.
The Tunisian Association of Democratic Women has criticized the content of the programs of the 2 female presidential candidates, which do not meet the aspirations of Tunisian women.
Activists have called on the Higher Independent Authority for Elections to impose sanctions against parties and independent lists that do not respect the principle of horizontal parity in candidate lists. They also denounced the misogynistic rhetoric prevailing in political debates to dissuade women from being politically active. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
The International Conference on Biorefinery 2019 is currently underway in Johannesburg, South Africa. Biorefinery is the conversion of biomass and green wastes to valuable products, including heat, power, liquid and gaseous fuels and chemicals. This conference provides a platform for international researchers, investors and decision makers to meet and exchange the latest research and development in this field. CGTN's Jolisan Jamela has more.
This is a gathering that provides a platform to meet and exchange ideas and to reinforce or establish connections and collaborations. Most importantly, to inspire more innovative ideas on the issue of biorefinery.
Towards this end, we are focused in particular on some biorefinery projects, which we regard as critical for creating opportunities that optimize socio-economic development, especially for rural communities. We believe that an integrated biorefinery approach can be applied across a number of market sectors, including chemicals, mining, health, agriculture, food, feed, pulp, paper, textiles, water, and energy.
During this conference, China and South Africa signed a memorandum of understanding for the establishment of the China-South Africa Joint Research Center of Clean Energy.
China has been committed to comprehensive green development, cultivation of clean energy industry, and overall source conservation and recycling. Internationally, China has been endeavoring for green development and construction of the Belt and Road Initiative, and working together with the international community to promote the green development.
In the future, maybe we can have some joint research and have some international cooperation project. Not only joint research, but also we say the joint cultivation of the student, and also especially young scientists. Yeah, this is very important. We must push this, and more cooperation between different countries, and we can solve the challenge problem.
As the fourth largest energy source in the world, biomass energy has become an important force in the paradigm shift of international energy consumption. Both South Africa and China attach great importance to research and development and industrial development of biomass energy and look forward to productive and effective ways of working together. Jolisan Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Local and international aid organizations in Nigeria are looking for ways to increase their decrease their vulnerability in crisis-ridden areas. Organizations face threats in conflict areas, especially women. This was among the issues raised at the conference to mark this year's World Humanitarian Day. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
Representatives from government, local and international aid agencies converge in the headquarters of the West African regional body, ECOWAS. It's a critical time for appraisal of the humanitarian crisis facing the region and constant dangers which face humanitarian aid workers who are now targets of insurgents.
Sometimes they are faced with extreme threats that affect their survival, especially in disaster situations, such as violent conflicts. Unfortunately, it has always been from time immemorial and impacted so much on both local and international aid workers.
Boko Haram's 10-year-old insurgency has left a devastating impact, especially in the country's northeastern region. Tens of thousands have been killed in the conflict, about 40 of them aid workers. 7.1 million people are estimated to be in dire need of humanitarian assistance in the three northeast affected states of Borno, Adamawa and Yobe.
The ECOWAS Commission will continue to work with member states and partners to promote the protection of humanitarian workers through policy orientation and advocacy. In this regard, the Commission has since 2013 been providing assistance to the affected population in the northeast of Nigeria. As part of activities to mark this year's commemoration, the Commission, in collaboration with the Nigerian government, will be providing water, boreholes, and rehabilitating damaged schools and health facilities in communities affected by the crisis in the northeast of Nigeria.
The Nigerian military have repeatedly said that Boko Haram is defeated, but the group continues to stage attacks on soft targets and military bases. What's more, access is often impeded by ongoing hostilities and inaccessible roads. As a result, more than 800,000 people are totally cut off from aid. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
And in Somalia, the government, together with UN agencies working in the country, have recognized female aid workers as part of the World Humanitarian Day. Government officials and international agencies have also called for respect and safety of aid workers as Somalia battles security challenges. Here's Michael Karanja with more on that.
For close to 3 decades now, Somalia has been in turmoil. The ouster of President Mohamed Said Barre was followed by a period of conflict that has since mutated into an insurgency, with Al-Shabaab pushing to establish a strict Islamic Sharia law. As many continue losing their lives, more are displaced.
We are here today to celebrate.
Female aid workers continue being part of teams responding to situations and are now being recognized and celebrated.
As a government, we salute the women working in the humanitarian sector and acknowledge that they have fundamental challenges such as insecurity, patriarchal attitudes, and harassment on a daily basis. They face tremendous challenge on the ground. I'm convinced that we need to use a platform to address these real changes for women in the field.
As they respond to man-made calamities and those occasioned by climate change, they are exposed to dangers. UNICEF's representative in the country is asking that these aid workers be respected and protected.
Evidence shows that when women are involved in humanitarian action, including at the decision-making level and at the leadership levels, the humanitarian response is more effective and especially also more inclusive. This is why many humanitarian organizations, including the UN and NGOs, are striving to achieve gender parity across the organizations.
Veteran Somali humanitarian worker Aisha Shaur was nominated as Somalia's Humanitarian Person of the Year. She has been involved in championing the rights of women and children by pushing for gender equality. Another honored worker is Amina Haji, who is the founder of Save Somalia Women and Children. The organization aids victims of gender-based violence.
To be a female aid worker in Somalia means a lot. It's an opportunity, risks and challenges. It's an opportunity to reach out to women, children, elderly affected by disaster and respond to their needs.
Days like today, it is a bright light, even amongst the people we have lost this year, unfortunately, to say we're still grateful and we're going to keep the charge going, and our light will not dim until we can work with every beneficiary so they're able to live their lives completely.
The World Humanitarian Day is celebrated on 19th August. It is meant to honor humanitarian efforts while advocating for the safety and security of humanitarian aid workers. The date was selected in honor of the 22 UN workers who were killed in a terrorist attack in Baghdad on 19th August 2003. Michael Karanja, CGTN.
Well, let's now go to Penina Karibe for a look at the day's business news. Penina.
Thank you, Beatrice. Coming up on Africa Live Business. Currency devaluations ate into South Africa's retail chains' profits. And tax officials in Nigeria on the spot over poor revenue collections.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year.
Nigeria, if you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Giant South African supermarket chain Shoprite Holdings has missed its full-year forecast due to inventory shortages and currency devaluations. The retail chain is recovering from a poor first half following a drop in sales and profit. The dip is attributed to the new enterprise system, which disrupted supply chains. Forex shortages and currency devaluations in markets such as Angola also hindered Shoprite's profitability. The trading profit fell by 14.3% to $449 million as headlines per share declined by 19.6% to 51 cents on the dollar. Various supermarkets in South Africa reported a trading loss of $17.2 million due to the rampant inflation that has taken a toll on businesses in Angola. NASA satellites have disclosed that the Kriel area in Mpumalanga, South Africa, is a global hotspot for deadly sulfur dioxide emissions. The area ranks as the second largest sulfur dioxide emission hotspot in the world after the Norilsk smelter complex in Russia. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
According to Greenpeace, power stations and industries burning coal and oil are responsible for 2/3 of the anthropogenic sulfur dioxide emission hotspots tracked by NASA satellites. The Mpumalanga province is home to a high concentration of coal-fired power stations.
Earlier this year, we talked about Mpumalanga as a province being the third worst sulfur dioxide pollution hotspot. But what the NASA satellite imagery has shown is that it's the Kriel area in Mpumalanga that is actually the second worst sulfur dioxide pollution hotspot in the world.
Most, if not all, of that pollution emanates from coal-fired power stations in the province, and this isn't lost on the Wits University academics who are working on developing clean coal technologies.
We don't believe that we must sterilize coal, which is a huge asset of South Africa. We must actually readjust it to the needs of climate change and reduce carbon emission. That is our belief. If we can get a good technology in that, it will be a blessing for the country.
Solutions need to be found because it's estimated that between 300 and 2,000 people die from coal-related pollutants every year.
Sulfur dioxide is a dangerous pollutant in and of itself, so it contributes to problems like lower respiratory infections, increased risk of stroke, increased risk of death by diabetes, but it also contributes to the formation of particulate matter, which is an even more dangerous pollutant, which causes severe diseases, including lung cancer.
Air quality concerns have been red flagged for several years now. Something has to be done, says Greenpeace. This, the government says, must be balanced against the economic needs of the country.
If you just switch off all coal-fired power stations, they supply about 70% of our energy with the hope that we'll have renewables, which supply under 10% of our energy. You will plunge the country into darkness. But if you manage the movement over a period to replace the capacity, that's why we must look into a range of technologies.
There's no argument that pollution is killing people across the country, and specifically in the Mpumalanga region. And it's important that new technologies are introduced that are going to bring down those pollution levels. And it's got to happen sooner rather than later. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Nigerian tax officials are on the spot for repeatedly failing to meet collection targets. President Muhammadu Buhari has queried Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Babatunde Fala. Fala was questioned over dwindling tax revenues since the inception of the current government in 2015. The President's office has asked the tax agency to account for significant variances in the budgeted collections and actual collections by the agency in each of the years 2015 to 2018. Despite hitting its highest revenue collection in 2018, the FIRS has witnessed tax revenue shortfalls of $2.7 billion to $5.5 billion. The agency projected $22 billion in collections for this year. There are fears that Nigeria is faced with a fiscal crisis, and the government has been cutting back on expenditure lately, this despite a slowdown in economic growth. In Uganda, taxpayers are protesting the planned move by the government to tax workers' retirement benefits. The proposed amendments contained in the National Social Security Bill 2019 will allow the government to tax the money workers receive when they retire, as opposed to the current law, which taxes the contributions they make while they're still working. It's just one proposal in the bill that's raising criticism from members of the public. Here's CGTN's Hilary Ayasiga.
Michael Kabuka is a contributor to the Workers' Pension Scheme, also known as the National Social Security Fund. He's been serving with the scheme for 10 years now. Kabuka is concerned that the tax on his savings could be hiked under the proposed amendments.
The question is, how much tax will I pay when I am actually getting the benefit? Because I get it as a lump sum, we are not sure, is it at what rate? It would be at 40%, which is the highest rate, because imagine if I get 1 million now and I get, say, 10 million or 20 million afterwards when I'm retiring, that should be subject to tax. But is it at the tax rate of 40%, 30% or 20%?
Kabuka and others want the proposed amendments to focus on taxing annual interest rather than taxing the benefit. The current law was enacted in 1985. But the government believes it no longer adequately represents the best interests of taxpayers. It says the proposed amendment will help eliminate double taxation.
Instead of having two places where the funds are being taxed, let's have the funds being taxed at the very end so that it allows the fund to invest more, it allows the individual to have a bigger take-home pay, and also it allows the government to collect more taxes, but also the member to get a bigger social security balance when they retire.
The proposed amendments also compel all workers in formal employment to contribute to the fund. Government figures show that the country has 19 million workers, and out of this, only 5 million contribute to the fund. Under the proposed amendments, the government is also seeking to borrow directly from the fund, a concern to some opposition lawmakers.
Government is actually borrowing. It is the biggest borrower from the fund. Why are they now seeking to provide for direct borrowing? Do they want to borrow it at an interest rate which is lower than the treasury bill? And that would be dangerous.
The government argues more people saving will widen the country's tax base. And taxpayers like Kabuka could walk away with a bigger paycheck upon retirement. Parliament will vote on the proposals in the coming weeks. Hilary Ayasiga, CGTN, Kampala.
The largest wind farm on the African continent is now operational in Kenya. The Lake Turkana wind power farm's 365 turbines can dispense 310 megawatts to Kenya's national grid. The project aims to boost Kenya's electricity supply by 13% and help lower electricity costs for Kenyan consumers. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
Africa's largest wind power plant was launched in Kenya in June 2019. The plant on the shores of Lake Turkana in northern Kenya aims at reducing electricity costs and dependence on fossil fuels. It is expected to move the nation towards meeting its ambitious goal of 100% green energy by next year.
Since 24th of September to date, we have now produced power that has saved the Kenyan consumer 8.5 billion shillings in fuel cost adjustments that would otherwise have been loaded onto the consumer tariff.
About 70% of the nation's electricity is generated from renewable sources such as hydropower and geothermal, more than 3 times the global average. But 1 in 4 Kenyans, mostly in rural areas, does not have access to electricity. Those with power face high costs and frequent blackouts due to unreliable supplies. The sprawling wind farm has been designed to boost the nation's electricity supply by 13% and help lower costs for Kenyan consumers.
During the day, we produce between 15 and 17% of Kenya's power. That is at peak demand. And at off-peak during the night, we produce up to 30% of Kenya's power.
Kenya has made great strides in renewable energy in recent years and is considered to be one of the few African nations making progress towards clean power. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Egypt's finance ministry is earmarking a debt-to-GDP ratio of 77.5% by 2022 from the current 90.8%. The ratio has over the years been lowered from 108% in June 2017 to 98% in 2018 as the government pushes to achieve success in its economic reform program. The debt reduction is expected to provide more resources for various sectors, including healthcare, create job opportunities, and also improve the sustainable use of public finances. The country's finance ministry hopes to diversify the funding sources in the 2019-2020 fiscal year once the deposit rate is decreased by the banks. Major tech firms and American tech industry groups are speaking out against a new French tax aimed at tech giants such as Google and Facebook. The opponents claim the tax is discriminatory. The French Senate in July approved a 3% levy on digital service companies that earn more than 25 million euros in French revenue and 750 million euros worldwide. CGTN's Jim Spellman has more from Washington.
Representatives from Amazon, Google, Facebook, and several industry associations testified before the U.S. Trade Representative Monday about France's new digital tax. Amazon says the 3% tax is harmful and discriminatory. The online retail giant responded by increasing the fees third-party sellers based in France pay by a corresponding 3%. The USTR will evaluate the comments from U.S. businesses and make a decision about what they may do in response. When French President Emmanuel Macron signed the new law last month, President Trump threatened to tax French wine in retaliation.
They should not have done it, so I may do that. I've always liked American wines better than French wines, even though I don't drink wine. I just like the way they look, okay? But American wines are great. American wines are great, and they didn't do the right thing when they start taxing our companies.
But French officials say this new tax has nothing to do with targeting American companies. They say the tax is simply intended to create a level playing field for small French companies.
Our American friends should not understand the decision taken by France to have its own national taxation of digital activities as any willingness of targeting the American companies. That's not the case. We are not willing to target the American companies. We are just willing to have a fair and efficient taxation of digital activities.
Later this month at the G7, France will push for a universal digital tax. It's not clear if the U.S. will go along with such a plan. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
That's it for now. But ahead on Global Business, Sudan's Forces for Freedom and Change are set to name Dr. Abdallah Hamdok, a renowned economist, as Prime Minister. We review his options on ending the country's economic turmoil. That's at the top of the hour. I shall see you then. For now, it's back to you, Beatrice.
Penina, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. A young artist in South Africa finds a way to turn a simple piece of string into a work of art.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population at risk, or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa? When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
One South African artist is creating what is known as string art. It was invented in the 19th century England and was then popularized in the 1970s as a decorative art. CGTN's Jelisa Njamela has more on that story.
String art has been around for a while now. It was popular in the 70s, but is now making a comeback as a simple and popular way of making one's artwork. String art is inspired by geometric shapes. The main materials are wooden board, nails and colorful threads. Thread is coiled around a grid of nails hammered into the wooden board to form a stunning end product. Tshego Matlowe is a string artist. She has mastered the technique and able to work with designs that customers come up with.
So with string art, what happens is that I use the main materials, which are the board. I usually use the pinewood board. I use the nails and colorful threads. So when making the string art, I take the thread, it's wound around a grid of nails, which are hammered into the board. So string art is very, very unique art and very therapeutic. I really like it.
Threading and colors are the main things that attracted Matlowe to string art.
The moment I saw string art, I was actually captured by the colors and the threading itself on top of the wood. So, and the fact that I haven't seen such art in our country, because I had to make a bit of a research on the internet just to check.
Matlowe sometimes sits back and marvels at her own creations.
The work that I'm proud of so far is the board that I made of an African woman. An African woman, she's, if you can just look at the picture, you can see that she's confident, she's comfortable in her own continent as an African woman. So that's the one that I love the most, especially since I'm a woman and it's also Women's Month. So yeah, that's an excellent picture that I like.
She now wants to create string art installations in hotels and other big establishments. Yolisa Njomela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, hyper-realism is an unusual genre of painting resembling high-resolution photography. Nigerian artist Belajo Ona-Olapo is taking this art form to another level. Using charcoal, his artwork seems to fool the eye. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekala.
An image like this would leave one wondering if it's a drawing or a black and white photograph. It's the handwork of hyper-realism artist Bolaji Onolakbo. Originally a graduate of building, Bolaji's childhood passion has now become his main profession. But what's unique about his art is his medium of expression, which is charcoal.
Charcoal is something dear to me. Not like I have any scientific reason behind charcoal, but of recent, when I became a professional artist, I realized that most artists don't use charcoal because it's very difficult to control. It can get messy real quick if you're not used to that medium. So I decided to create a niche for myself with charcoal.
Bolaji's charcoal paintings are earning him some popularity here. More and more people are finding his works quite interesting.
A lot of people appreciate it, and I think Nigeria is really waking up to hyper-realism art. We are more like an export of hyperrealism outside Nigeria. I get messages on my social media, I get people coming to my studio to watch me work. So I think people really appreciate it and I'm happy about that.
Bolaji has been making business sense of his artworks here at home. Depending on the drawing, size and inspiration for it, an artwork could sell for as low as $100 and as much as millions. Now he's looking to expand his horizon beyond the shores of Nigeria.
Next 5 years, I should be exhibiting all over the world. Hopefully next year, I should be exhibiting in 2 or 3 countries. So I have a plan of going fully international, not just being in Abuja and creating my art for Abuja. I believe my art is meant for everyone. Everybody can relate to what I produce.
Inspired by his environment and love for nature, Bolaji hopes to use his art to give back to the cause of saving the environment. Kelechi Emekala, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's coming up. Teams in last-minute preparations as the 2019 African Games officially gets underway in Morocco.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The 12th edition of the African Games has gotten underway officially.